Hello, everyone, and welcome to July 17th, regular Town Council meeting of the Town of Vegreville. I call this meeting to order at 7:02. I'll be looking for a motion to accept the agenda. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, the adoption of the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillor Bullock was first.
I saw him on the
Oh, yeah. Any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. First up, we have a piece of correspondence from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Rick McIver. Dear Mayor McPhee, further to my predecessor's letter on March 2nd, 2023, a strong partnership between the province and local governments remains a key priority of the Government of Alberta. To that end, I am pleased to confirm the allocation amounts to your community for the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, MSI, Capital and Operating Programs, and the Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF program. The Town of Vegreville on MSI received $621,277, and on the operating, we received $101,106, and in the CCBF, $357,330. MSI and CCBF funding amounts for all municipalities and Métis settlements are posted on the Government of Alberta website. I look forward to working together with you to support your local infrastructure and operating needs and building a strong, vibrant communities across Alberta. Sincerely, Rick McIver, Minister of Municipal Affairs. So I'll take a motion to receive and file. Councillor Warwick. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I guess I would just say I appreciate always knowing what we have. I know their formula is changing, although, I mean, I think it's fair to say that this proves why we have to have some continuing advocacy. Unfortunately, looking at your MSI operating allocations, given the just cost overages alone that are going on projects, there wouldn't be much you could do with that amount. And again, obviously we're grateful for all amounts we receive at all times, but I'm just, as services continue to be downloaded, I know that's something we're going to advocate for to the minister, but as services continue to be downloaded, and especially communities like ours that is providing infrastructure and service and programming for surrounding communities, the amount isn't gonna quite cut it.
Yeah. Well, well, first of all, are these numbers all correct? This is what we were expecting. Last Sunday, I attended Minister Dreesen's reception in Calgary, and the Premier and a lot of other ministers were there. And I know that Alberta Munis will be lobbying for a little more money in their upcoming deal, but it don't really seem like it's going to be there. They had budgeted a surplus at $78 a barrel. Break even is $75 a barrel, and we haven't been over 70 for a while. So I don't really see royalties being able to be up the ante or fill our pot a little bit more. So we'll have to be very careful on the projects. I know we got a lot of big projects going on right now, and I know what they're announcing for next year is basically holding the line. So, and hopefully they'll be able to do that. So, any other comments? All those in favor of receiving file? Carried. Thank you. Next up, CAO Leggett.
Thank you, Worship. So this item's coming back in front of Council just following the legislative meeting last week. And Council will recall this is a former property owner, Amy Anthony, who's requesting a waiver of the penalties for a disconnected water meter. Kind of cut and dry case on our part. We uncovered that the water meter had been disconnected, and then that compels our offices to go ahead and levy the fine. So it's at council's discretion, but we couldn't find anything in the case in the file that would suggest administrative error or anything like that to justify a waiving of these fees.
Okay, I'll take a motion to receive and file this letter. Councillor Bullock makes the motion, and I'll start. We had this letter read, and we went through all the joining information that she sent, and it was complicated or deal or whatever, but what isn't complicated is the fact that she's registered owner on a house that broke a bylaw, and those fines are in place. And I know when we talked about it, there was some discussion, and myself personally, I've had many rental houses in this town over the years, and I've been stuck by a lot of renters when it comes to water bills, and there is an obligation that as the owner of a property on title, that these fines and these bills come to you. So it's not a good situation for her, and probably no fault of her own, but that's just the way the law is. Is there any more comments on that? So what are we going to instruct admin to do?
Levy the fines.
Okay, so we'll instruct the senior admin to correspond with the writer and let her know that we can't not take back the fines on
Yep.
this.
Thank you, Worship. I'll reach out to her tomorrow and let her know the fine stand.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving and following the actions? Carried. Thank you very much. Next up, Director Johnston and his exciting monthly cash statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess starting the month, we had a total cash balance of 9.7 million. Over the month, it increased to 13.36 million, predominantly due to collecting a lot of the property taxes due to the June 30th deadline. One other thing you'll see on there is that we did move $6 million worth of funds from CWB back to BMO to get about an extra half a point of interest that will accrue monthly. So that's good. Every little bit helps. And then from a cash highlight perspective, lots of extra deposits this month due to collecting those property taxes. We also received $89,000 from MCON as a fine payment that the fire department received that they will be spending to get some more safety gear. And then few debenture payments, 3 payrolls, and then some project funding that's starting to go out. We had $78,000 to B&W Asphalt, $72,000 to Coville Construction. Purchased a Parks vehicle from Grant Miller Motors, and those are about all the highlights.
Was exciting.
Yeah. And the bank balanced.
Looking good. I'll take a motion to accept the report. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Any comments? Any questions? Wow.
There you go.
So we move back to the BMO with that money for the purpose of
Getting a better rate, Your Honor. Yeah.
okay. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next up, Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today's topic is from the Vegreville Agricultural Society, a road closure request. The proposal is to approve the temporary road closure for the Agricultural Society parade route on Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. At the July 11th, 2023 Legislative Committee meeting, Council reviewed a letter from the Vegreville Agricultural Society requesting a temporary road closure for the Vegreville Country Fair Parade. The parade will be held on Wednesday, August 9th at 11 a.m. Parade lineup will begin at 10 a.m. at the Vegreville Composite High School and will head east down 55th Ave, then turn south down 60th Street, and then east down 45th Ave to finish at the Egg Grounds. Then there is a map attached. The Vegreville Agricultural Society is also requesting the town provide barricades and staff to direct traffic at those barricades. The temporary road closure will be communicated through the town's website and social media channels. Recommendation is being made that Town Council approve the temporary road closure for the parade route on August 9th, 2023 from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. And further that, Council approve the supply of barricades and staff at 20 locations to close the parade route to vehicle traffic.
Thank you. Councillor Berry makes the motion. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Berry.
That parade route seemed to be well received by everybody, and then everything went smoothly there before, so actually, you know, it's a good thing that's still going ahead with the parade this year, and I know some are not happy not to see it downtown, but nonetheless, it seems to be a safer route to take at the moment, so.
That's right, Councillor Bullock, and it also picks up 2 more of our seniors' lodges, so they have an opportunity to see the parade when at times they wouldn't.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Next up, Director Johnston again.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a request for council decision with the topic being to allocate funds for the Pasanka Park paving project. The proposal will be to approve the allocation of funding that will be used to pay for the paving project. The background is the Pasanka Park paving project has previously been approved as a 2023 capital project, but due to changes in government funding, there's a shortfall in funds to pay for the project. Different grant funds or reserves can be used to cover the project costs due to not receiving the STIP funding. The financial implication is due to not receiving the anticipated STIP funding, the town of Vegreville is required to allocate $146,000 to cover the cost of paving the park. The total project cost will be $249,500. Increasing the allocation of CCBF funds by $146,000 would leave $80,791 available for future projects. The recommendation is that Town Council approve the increase of CCBF grant funds from $103,500 to $249,500 to pay for the Pasanka Park paving project.
Okay, I'll take a motion for the recommendation. Councillor Warwell makes the motion. Any questions? So what was the budget in this year's budget for that paving project?
So the budget was, I guess, larger because it included up to the 4 phases that were going to be completed. Due to not receiving the STIP funding, we had already allocated $103,500 of the CCBF funds, which now we're looking to increase to pay for the project due to not receiving the STIP funds.
Okay.
And we've also reduced the scope of the project to fit within what's financially feasible.
Okay, go ahead, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just pulled it up on the capital and special projects sheet here, and these numbers are pulled directly from the budget discussions, and it's on the sheet as $414,000 for this year, but as Director Johnson mentioned there, the project scope has changed, so
So we had budgeted
$414.
with grant money coming in.
Correct.
Was the 103,500 enough to do phase 1? Or where were we at with that, Director of the phase?
The 103,000 was our contribution, I believe, to the 4 phases,
Yep.
because it was 75-25.
So at the last meeting, we okayed phase 2 up to the,
Approximately 50%, which was take us past the VIC.
yeah, so, and that's gonna be done in an overlay there, correct? We're not digging that up.
There are some small areas that need some maintenance or some attention, but it's not a full retro, no.
Just so everybody knows that. So when this is done, and we'll still have $80-some thousand left unallocated out of that cease.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion for the recommendation. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up, Director Johnston again.
Thank you, Your Worship. The topic of this RCD is to allocate funds for the Forest Main project. The proposal is to approve the allocation of funding that will be used to pay for the project. The background is the tendered project values are higher than what was budgeted for, so the reallocation of funds is required to pay for the capital project. The financial implication is that the Forest Main project was budgeted at $2.976 million, but has come in at $3.748. The difference of $772,000 needs to be funded. The recommendation is that Town Council approve the increase of funding as follows. The increased CCBF fund used by $80,791. Increased MSI fund used by $323,527. Increasing these two funds would fully utilize the grants that are available to date, and then use debentured funds for 1.558 million.
And then the other grant from the province was a 1.265.
The M1.
Correct, yes.
So we'll have, what we're asking here for is the debenture of 1.558, 128, correct?
Correct, and the increased use of grant funds for the CCBF and the MSI.
And that'll finish off all the grant funding that we have from.
That is correct.
Okay, well, before we start a discussion, I need a motion for the recommendation. Councillor Berry makes the motion. Okay, any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
And just so the public understands that some of this increase in the overrun there was to have these areas where, in case there's a break, that they could overland pump and make it possible without, contamination and stuff like that. Could you explain that, Director Lefebvre?
Yeah, for sure, Councillor Bullock. There are bypass pumping stations that'll be put in, approximately 300 to 500 meters apart. And what it allows us to do is if there's a break in a certain area, we can overland pump by just simply connecting a line and then still utilize the pumps in the lift station. So it's a very economic way to bypass a leaking sewer system, which Alberta Environment and Environment Canada are not happy with when that happens. It is a contravention of our approval. So this will not only allow us to keep things pumping so we don't have to worry about backing up the town, it gives us a little more time to get things organized to repair something that scale.
Thank you. Wise decision.
Go ahead.
I guess I just want to say is, I think that there might be people, because I've had a few people just watching our meetings and talking to us, that might think that what we're doing here is some reallocating of funds and changes due to not planning, but the reality is it's literally due to advanced planning. We looked at a problem that came on. This was always a project that we were keeping an eye on, and it was actually not something that sprung on us. If anything, this was a strategic decision to deal with infrastructure, that there's no use at us going ahead with any of our other plans. We don't need to go ahead with parks or playgrounds or any other facilities if this main piece of infrastructure failed. So I just think that it's important to say that we're making decisions when we do have some other funds available to us at a time where we can do this project, but it was very much a strategic decision, not in any way one that fell on us without us being prepared for it.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll echo that. The aspect is that this is an aging piece of infrastructure. It is probably the most important infrastructure in the town if you consider that it takes all of the waste from town to the lagoon. It is also pertinent pre-planning because by putting in this bypass system, several years down the road, when we get to the situation we are now, when they're at 30 years from now, they'll be able to still maintain this infrastructure, this piping, and won't have the problems that we have been faced with the last few years when we get a break. Like the last one, I believe, was in December, right at Christmas time. They're very costly, and if you can't get them fixed, well, it's going to be very serious for the town. So I think this was brought to us, and acting on it now to get it into good condition is just wise and really needed. Thank you.
Okay, well, I would like to correct a mistake that I made a while ago. In 2022, we applied for the same grant funding and the AMWWP with a smaller number. And there was no money left in the cookie jar. And then when we looked at this project, or Director Lefebvre's department and the engineers were looking at it, the revalving in that facility in the bottom was added in, these extra lift stations, the capability to pump overland, and a little bit more at the lagoons were added. And my understanding was this was not part of the grant application, but in 2023, when we reapplied for this grant, that was all in again. So the AMWWP grant represents their 40% of the new pricing, not the pricing from the year before when these extras were added. It's the ISIP grant that was just not available, and there was no money unallocated within the province, and we don't know when the feds were ever gonna top that pot up again. So I thought it was a problem that we were applying the old math, the old number to the grant application, but in actual fact, it was a new grant application with the updated numbers. The overruns is just where the cost of doing business is today. And there were a few other tenders that were opened that were a lot more in overruns than this. So by debenturing this money, we spread out the cost of this crucial part of infrastructure to, 30 years of use to whoever the residents are gonna be then, so. Is there any other comments on this borrowing? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. We're in a really good mood tonight, Director Johnson. So that's it for agenda items. We'll move on to council reports. And since I always leave Councillor Curtis to the end, we're gonna start with Councillor Warwa.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. My report is not that exciting. I actually only had the July 11th legislative meeting and the 13th, and then tonight. None of my other meetings met in the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you. I know things are slowing down the boards, and it's nice that you can spend some time with family and friends too. So, Councillor Curtis.
Oh, thank you. I thought you'd never ask. Mine are the same as Councilor Rawa's, just the ledge on the 11th and tonight's council meeting. We sit on a few of the same boards, so we're hiatus for the summer.
Okay. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was really busy. I had 3 meetings. The ledge tonight's, and we had the VRPHARC committee meeting one more time. That's the attention and retention for doctors and other health services. Actually, things are looking up pretty good in terms of the hospital. They're getting settled down with the new systems that are going there. They've got a couple more staff hired. We're still short on doctors though, and it's be a fairly lengthy process on some of it. We've got one that should be coming soon, and then we start looking at trying the long process of getting another doctor set up and trying to encourage them to come here. So that's, other than that, everything's been a few emails, a few different calls and stuff on the Vermilion River watershed, but they weren't really meetings. They were just executive stuff. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billick. Billick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, back on June 28th, I had a victim services meeting with the Director of Alberta Victim Services. And just to let everybody know, transition period they're looking at in spring of 2024 to create 4 different boards instead of the 60 that there is now. So it's just going to streamline it. And they just want everybody to be aware that there is going to be victim services in place, and they won't be going away from our communities. So July 6th, Chamber of Commerce Board meeting, where they welcomed a new board member, our Economic Development Manager, Jameson Brown. Great addition to the team there, so looking for great things to happen there. So, and then July 11th, Legislative Committee meeting, and July 13th, today, Town Council meeting. That is it.
Sandra, did I send you wine? Oh, I thought I did. Okay, so you're saying this is my fault? Well, I do have one, because I do know I made one. I'll try to send it. You'll need it anyway, right? So you want to find out what I do all the time? See if it'll come up here. Sorry for the hold up, folks. We're good?
Just barely.
Okay, it's almost working. Here we go. Okay, so on July the 4th, I sat in with a bunch of other mayors and some reeves on Public Safety Canada's, the people representing the Minister of Public Safety, and it was about contract policing and the assessment of what we'd like to see. And I was very adamant that they should take the agreement part out, where the MSPA didn't make sense to me, because I told them I've negotiated a lot of agreements. This one, we don't have one say in it, so it doesn't really sound like an agreement. A lot of the mayors and reeves have the same problem, that we have no say. They're negotiating a new contract right now for the officers. They're pricing themselves out of the market in policing. The fact that we don't have any policing in the AM hours, and you know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it there wasn't a lot of positive comments from most elected officials on there, and there was the top brass of the RCMP there as well. And I hopefully they got our point, and they had another one the next day, and they're doing it all over Canada. And I would imagine most municipalities. I know that when we were at Alberta Munis this spring and listening to our counterparts in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and New Brunswick, where they're at too with the policing contracts. So we'll see how that goes. On the 7th, I did the opening ceremonies at the Sanka Festival, and that's the most I've ever seen there at the opening ceremonies. It was done very nice. On the 9th, I drove to Calgary in the morning, and I attended Minister Dreeshen's Stampede reception, and the Premier was there, and there was a lot of ministers, and it was a lot of good conversation, and I think it was well worth it. Got to listen to what the government's forecast is and what is important to them moving forward. And then that evening, I attended the Canadian Strategies Group. They had a reception downtown, and there was a bunch of different ministers and a bunch of different MLAs there, and there was a few former MLAs in Calgary that had lost their riding, but got to talk to them, and it was a nice evening, and I drove back the next morning. On the 11th, we had our ledge meeting, and today, CEO Leggett and myself got together with our counterparts, the Reeve and their CAO, and we just talked a little bit about our recreation agreement and what it looks like moving forward, to get a few of the preliminary things done before we take it to our committees, and then tonight's council meeting. So that's what I have. So is there any other business of council? We have no closed session items, which is nice. So if that's the case, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:30. Everybody go home. Enjoy your families.